The grand hall of Meridian's noble court sparkled with crystalline chandeliers, but Dr. James Reed felt anything but welcome. He stood among the crowd of aliens, the only human in a sea of tall, blue-skinned figures. 5 years of working as an indentured researcher hadn't made these gatherings any easier. Baron Thex stood on the raised platform, his elaborate robes catching the light. His third eye, a mark of noble birth, gleamed with barely hidden contempt as he surveyed the gathering. James tried to blend into the background, but the Baron's gaze found him anyway. "Ah, the human scientist," Baron Thex's voice boomed across the hall. "Step forward." James's heart sank. Being singled out by the Baron never ended well for anyone. He moved through the crowd, which parted easily before him. The alien's whispers followed his every step. "Your work on neural interfaces has caught my attention," the Baron said, his mouth twisted in what passed for a smile among his kind. Two servants wheeled in what looked like a medical pod. "I have a gift for you." The pod's cover slid back, revealing a young alien female. Her skin was a lighter shade of blue than the Baron's, almost silver in the hall's lighting. She lay completely still, her third eye dulled, but James could see she was breathing. "This is my daughter, Aria," Baron Thex announced, a disappointment in every way. "The genetic curse that paralyzed her body has made her worthless to our bloodline." He gestured carelessly toward her. "Since you humans pride yourselves on fixing broken things, she's yours now." The hall erupted in laughter. James clenched his fists but kept his face neutral. He'd learned long ago that showing anger only amused them more. "You're too kind, Baron," James said carefully, bowing his head. "I accept your generous gift." This seemed to surprise the Baron. His third eye blinked rapidly. "You do? Well, how amusing. Perhaps you can teach her to fetch like those earth animals you call dogs." More laughter filled the hall. James approached the pod, studying the young alien woman. Despite her paralysis, her eyes followed his movement. There was intelligence there, and something else, a fierce determination that matched his own. "I'll need her medical records," James said, maintaining his professional tone. The Baron waved dismissively. "Give him whatever he wants. It makes no difference." He turned to the crowd. "Let this be a lesson in human foolishness. They'll waste time on anything." As servants began transferring medical data to James' tablet, he noticed something remarkable. Aria's third eye, though dulled, was tracking complex light patterns on the ceiling. Her condition hadn't affected her mental capabilities at all. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. James arranged for Aria's pod to be transported to his research facility, all while enduring jokes and mock congratulations from the gathered nobles. Some even tossed him small coins, a traditional gesture when someone adopted a broken thing. Later that night, in the quiet of his lab, James studied Aria's medical records. The genetic condition affecting her was rare but not untreatable. At least, not with a combination of human medical knowledge and alien technology. The Baron, like many of his kind, had simply decided she wasn't worth the effort. "I know you can understand me," James said softly, standing beside her pod. "I'm going to help you, but not to prove anything to your father or his court. I'm going to help you because you deserve a chance to show them who you really are." Aria's third eye brightened slightly, the equivalent of a smile in her people. For the first time since arriving on this alien world, James felt truly certain of his purpose. The Baron had meant to humiliate him, but instead, he'd given him an opportunity to change everything. He pulled up his research notes and began working on modifications to his neural interface design. The Baron and his court could laugh all they wanted. Soon enough, they would understand that sometimes the greatest potential lies in those they choose to overlook. 3 weeks had passed since the ceremony, and James barely left his lab anymore. Empty coffee cups littered his workstation as he adjusted another set of neural sensors. Aria lay in her modified medical pod nearby, her eyes following his every movement. "This version should work better," he said, carefully attaching the delicate sensors to her temples and third eye. The previous ones didn't account for your species' unique brainwave patterns. He'd learned to talk to her while he worked. Her eye movements suggested she understood everything. The interface hummed to life. James held his breath as data streamed across his screens. Previous attempts had produced only static, but this time, words appeared on the screen. "Hello, Dr. Reed. Thank you for your persistence." James almost knocked over his chair as he jumped up. "It works. You can communicate." His excitement made him forget his usual composure. "How do you feel? Is the interface comfortable?" More words appeared, one careful letter at a time. "The sensation is strange, but not unpleasant. I have waited many years to speak with someone." Over the next few hours, James learned more about Aria than her father had probably known in her entire life. She had taught herself multiple languages by listening to court conversations. She understood advanced mathematics from studying the crystal patterns in the ceiling of her old room. Her mind was a treasure trove of knowledge, trapped in a body that couldn't express it. "The court believes intelligence resides in the third eye," Aria explained through the interface. "When mine became dull, they assumed my mind was gone too. They'd never bothered to check." James shook his head in disbelief. "Their prejudice blinded them to your potential. But why didn't your father seek treatment? Surely with his resources, treatment would mean admitting imperfection in his bloodline." "He preferred to hide me away." The interface allowed them to work together on improving its design. Aria's understanding of her own biology, combined with James's technical knowledge, led to rapid improvements. Within days, she could communicate as fast as anyone could type. One evening, as James was reviewing some data, Aria's words appeared with unusual urgency. "Someone's coming. It's one of Father's spies." James quickly shifted his screens to display routine medical data. Moments later, a tall alien in servant's clothes entered, carrying what appeared to be cleaning supplies. James nodded to him casually while pretending to take notes. The servant lingered longer than necessary, but eventually left. "How did you know?" James asked once they were alone. "I recognize his footsteps. He used to check on me in the palace. Father has many such watchers." This led to Aria teaching James about the complex web of noble court politics. She had spent years observing, unable to speak, but absorbing everything. She knew which nobles were secretly allied, which ones opposed her father, and which ones might be sympathetic to their work. "Your father's enemies might try to use us," James warned. "Or they might protect us when we need it most," Aria replied. In noble politics, today's joke can become tomorrow's weapon. As weeks passed, their sessions grew longer. James installed a larger screen so they could work on more complex problems together. He found himself sharing stories about Earth, about his own family, about why he'd accepted an indenture contract on an alien world. "You could have had an easier life on Earth," Aria noted one day. "Easy isn't always right," James replied, adjusting some calculations they'd been working on. "Sometimes the hardest path leads to the most important discoveries." The interface screen flickered briefly before displaying her response, like discovering that a broken noble's daughter might not be so broken after all. James smiled. "You were never broken, Aria. You just needed someone to listen." That evening, as James reviewed their progress, he realized something had changed. What had started as a medical project had become something more. They weren't just doctor and patient anymore. They were partners in something that could change both their worlds. In the corner of his lab, Aria's third eye glowed brighter than it had in years, casting a soft light that seemed to promise better days ahead. James stood back and admired the sleek exoskeleton frame laid out on his workbench. 2 months of secret work had led to this moment. He'd combined the lightweight metals favored by the aliens with design principles from Earth's medical technology. The result looked almost beautiful, like a sculpture made of silvery threads and crystal joints. "The neural interface is ready," Aria typed on their now familiar communication screen. "But Father's spies report everything. How will we test it?" James grinned as he pressed a button on his tablet. Heavy shutters slid down over the lab's windows, and a soft hum indicated the activation of privacy shields he quietly installed over the past weeks. Let them try to watch now. These shields are meant for classified military research. As far as anyone knows, we're still working on basic communication tests. He carefully lifted Aria from her pod using the lab's medical equipment. The exoskeleton was designed to wrap around her body like a second skin. Each piece clicked into place with satisfying precision. The final component was a delicate crown-like structure that would amplify the signals from her third eye. "Ready?" James asked, his finger hovering over the activation switch. "I've been ready my whole life," appeared on the screen. The exoskeleton hummed to life. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then Aria's right hand twitched. It was a tiny movement, but it was the first voluntary motion she'd made in years. James watched, hardly daring to breathe, as her fingers slowly curled into a fist, then relaxed. "The neural pathways are responding," he said, checking his instruments. "How does it feel?" The words that appeared on the screen were shaky, as if typed by trembling fingers. "Strange, wonderful, overwhelming." Over the next hour, they worked through basic movements. Each small success felt like a victory. By the end of the session, Aria could move both arms and turn her head. Her third eye glowed brighter than James had ever seen it. "Tomorrow we'll try standing," he said as he carefully removed the exoskeleton. "We need to take it slow to avoid drawing attention." But their secret was already starting to leak. The next morning, a nervous-looking alien servant appeared at the lab with an unusual request. His daughter, also suffering from a genetic defect, had been hidden away from society. Would the human doctor perhaps take a look? James glanced at Aria's communication screen. "We should help," she typed. "Every alley matters." More cases followed. A noble's son with curved spine crystals, a merchant's daughter with malformed limbs. Each one had been deemed unworthy of attention by traditional alien medicine. James examined them all, taking careful notes on their unique conditions. "Your father isn't the only one who hides away those who are different," James said to Aria one evening as they reviewed patient files. "But why do they trust a human doctor?" "Because you see value where others see flaws," Aria replied through the interface, "and because hope is stronger than prejudice." They worked on improving the exoskeleton design, making it more adaptable for different conditions. Aria's understanding of alien physiology proved invaluable. She could anticipate problems James would never have considered, like how the crystal formations in their bones would interact with the frame's power field. One afternoon, as James was adjusting the crown component, Aria's words appeared with unusual urgency. "Someone comes, not a regular spy." James quickly hid the exoskeleton components, but left the privacy shields up. A tall, elegantly dressed alien entered the lab. James recognized him as Lord Venn, one of the most influential nobles in the court. The Lord studied Aria for a long moment, his third eye glowing with interest. "Word spreads, human doctor. Some say you work miracles. Others say you meddle in things best left alone." He paused. "I have a grandson. He was born without the ability to form proper crystal structures. The family would be grateful for any help you might provide." After the noble left, Aria's message appeared slowly on the screen. "The game changes. My father's jokes have drawn the attention of powers even he must respect." James looked at the exoskeleton hidden beneath his workbench. What had started as one act of defiance was growing into something bigger than either of them had imagined. The whispers in the noble court had grown too loud to ignore. Baron Thex sat in his private chamber, gripping the arms of his crystal throne as his spies delivered their latest reports. His worthless daughter now had regular visits from members of the most powerful houses. The human doctor's lab had become an unexpected center of noble attention. Meanwhile, in that very lab, James watched as Aria took her first steps in public. Lord Venn's grandson stood nearby, his own smaller exoskeleton gleaming under the lab lights. The boy's crystal formations, once weak and brittle, now grew strong and straight within the supportive frame. "My grandfather says you've done more for our house than 100 traditional healers," the boy said, his third eye bright with excitement. "Is it true that Lady Aria helps design the treatments?" Before James could answer, Aria typed her response on the large screen they now kept in the lab's reception area. "Every patient teaches us something new. Your case helped us understand crystal growth patterns better than any previous study." The boy's eyes widened at her quick response. Like many others, he'd believed the rumors about her damaged mind. Now she was helping to heal others like her, proving those rumors wrong with every successful treatment. Later that day, a message arrived from House Venn. They were offering protection, guards, resources, and political support. They weren't the first noble house to make such offers. "Your father's enemies see an opportunity," James said to Aria as they reviewed the message. "But are we ready for open opposition to him?" Aria's response appeared thoughtfully. "Father's greatest weapon was always shame. He made families hide their disabled children, made them believe difference was weakness. By helping these children, we stripped that weapon from him." Their work had created a network of grateful nobles, merchant families, and even some commoners who had scraped together enough resources to seek treatment. Each success spread the word further. Each child who learned to walk, each third eye that brightened with renewed purpose, became a living challenge to the old ways of thinking. One morning, James arrived to find an unusual group waiting outside his lab. 3 noble families stood together, each with a child showing signs of genetic conditions. But behind them stood something even more surprising. A group of common aliens, their clothing marking them as factory workers and traders. "We heard you help children like ours," one worker said nervously. "We may not have noble blood, but surely our children deserve a chance too." James looked at the group, then at Aria through the lab window. Her third eye glowed steady and sure. He opened the lab doors wide. "Everyone's children deserve a chance. Come in." The noble families shifted uncomfortably at mixing with commoners, but their shared concern for their children proved stronger than social barriers. As James examined each child, he noticed the nobles and workers beginning to talk, sharing stories of their children's struggles and hopes. That evening, as James updated their patient records, Aria's words appeared with unusual intensity. "Father has called an emergency session of the Noble Council. He claims you're disrupting the natural order." James frowned. "Natural order? There's nothing natural about denying children help." "Some houses still believe in the old ways," Aria typed. "They think genetic conditions are a sign of unworthiness. By helping us live full lives, you challenge their entire belief system." A quiet chime interrupted them. Another message from House Venn. The Baron was moving to revoke James's research privileges, but 6 major houses had already pledged to block the motion. The political balance was shifting. "Your father gave you to me as a joke," James said, looking at Aria. "He never imagined you would become a symbol of change." Aria stood up in her exoskeleton, now moving with growing confidence. Her typed words appeared on the screen with deliberate care. "He never imagined that kindness could be stronger than cruelty. But we did." Outside the lab, the lights of the city sparkled like countless stars. Somewhere in those lights, the Baron prepared his next move. But he would find that the joke he played had become something far more powerful, a revolution of compassion that was rewriting the rules of his world. The warning came at midnight. Lord Venn's eldest son burst into the lab, his third eye pulsing with alarm. "The Baron has called his house guards. They're coming for both of you." James looked up from his work, then at Aria, who stood perfectly balanced in her latest version of the exoskeleton. They'd known this moment would come, but not so soon. "How long do we have?" James asked, already moving to secure their research data. "Minutes." Father tried to delay them, but a distant crash interrupted him. The outer doors of the research complex were being forced open. Aria's fingers flew across her communication panel. The backup plan. Now, they'd prepared for this, hiding copies of their research in secure locations across the city. Every successful patient's family had a piece of the knowledge needed to help others. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. James quickly activated the lab's privacy shields, but they both knew it wouldn't hold the Baron's forces for long. The doors shuddered under the first impact. "You've corrupted what belonged to me." The Baron's voice boomed through the walls. "My daughter, my position, my authority. You've turned them all into mockery." Aria stepped forward, her movements fluid and graceful in the exoskeleton. She typed rapidly, her words appearing on the main screen for all to see. "I was never your property, Father. My condition didn't make me worthless. Your prejudice did." The doors groaned under another assault. Lord Ven's son drew a ceremonial weapon, positioning himself between the entrance and them. "House Ven stands with you. Others are coming." As if in answer, new voices filled the corridor outside. "Stand down, Baron. You overstep your authority." James recognized the voices of other noble lords and ladies whose children they'd helped. The Baron's rage became almost visible through the walls. "You dare interfere in house matters. She is my blood. And our children are our blood." The response came from multiple voices. "The human doctor and your daughter gave them back their lives. We won't let you destroy that hope." The pounding on the doors stopped. Through the privacy shield's distortion, James could see the Baron's forces facing off against a growing crowd of nobles and their guards. But it was the group behind them that really caught his attention. Dozens of common aliens, parents of children they'd helped, workers who'd seen the changes in their families. "Look at them, Father." Aria's words appeared on every screen in the complex. She'd taken control of the display system. "Look at all the lives you call worthless. Every child you would have hidden away. Every family you would have shamed into silence." The Baron's voice cracked with fury. "You think this display of weakness proves anything? Our bloodlines are strengthened by compassion," interrupted a new voice. The crowd parted to reveal the Grand Matriarch herself, her ancient third eye glowing with authority. "I have seen the work done here. The human doctor and your daughter haven't weakened our people. They've shown us how to become stronger." The privacy shields hummed as James lowered them. The doors slid open to reveal the Baron standing frozen, caught between rage and the realization that he'd lost control of the situation. "Your gift was meant as a joke," James said quietly, stepping forward. "But Aria turned it into something beautiful. She showed me how to help your people, and they showed me what courage looks like." The Baron looked at his daughter, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. She stood tall in her exoskeleton, her third eye bright with intelligence and determination. Around them, nobles and commoners alike watched, many with their own children who now stood straight and strong thanks to similar devices. "The old ways are changing," the Grand Matriarch announced. "And you, Baron, must decide. Will you change with them or be left behind?" In the silence that followed, Aria walked forward, each step precise and deliberate. She stopped in front of her father and raised her hand to type one final message. "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to hate would make me as blind as you were." The Baron's third eye dimmed, then flared, a sign of strong emotion among his kind. The joke he played had backfired spectacularly, becoming instead the catalyst for a change he could no longer control. The news spread across Meridian like wildfire. Within days of the confrontation at the lab, families began emerging from hidden rooms and distant estates, bringing children who had been kept out of sight for years. James's small medical facility couldn't handle a flood of patients, but help came from an unexpected direction. The Trade Council offers 6 empty warehouses in the medical district, Lord Ven announced one morning, placing a data crystal on James's desk, and 15 healing houses have pledged their support and resources. Aria, working at her own desk nearby, typed quickly on her console. The noble houses are competing to show their support. Father's defeat has made helping the disabled fashionable. Her third eye sparkled with amusement at the irony. James watched as another group of patients arrived outside the newly established treatment center. Among them, he noticed something different. Alien doctors in training robes, coming to learn the new techniques. "We can't help everyone ourselves," he told Area as they reviewed the growing list of cases. "We need to teach others." The next week saw the first training session for alien medical practitioners. James stood before a room full of curious faces, with Area beside him demonstrating the neural interface technology. Her presence made everything more real for them. She was living proof that their old beliefs about genetic conditions had been wrong. "The key isn't just the technology," James explained to the gathered healers. "It's about seeing the person behind the condition. Every patient has potential waiting to be unlocked." One young healer raised her hand. "But the old texts say genetic flaws are a sign of unworthiness. How do we overcome generations of such teaching?" Area stepped forward, her exoskeleton humming softly. Her response appeared on the large screen behind them. "By showing better results than those old teachings ever could. Watch." She demonstrated a series of complex movements that would have been impossible months ago. Then she brought forward 3 children they treated, each showing remarkable progress. The alien healers leaned forward, their third eyes bright with interest. More changes followed. The merchant guilds, seeing an opportunity, began manufacturing simpler versions of the exoskeletons for wider distribution. James and Area reviewed each design, ensuring they maintained the essential elements that made them effective. "They're not as advanced as your personal unit," James told Area as they examined a new model, "but they'll help more people than we could reach alone." "Sometimes simple tools in many hands are better than perfect ones kept to a few," Area typed in response. The movement grew beyond their original goals. Families who had hidden away their disabled members for generations started speaking out. Support groups formed in every district of the city. Even the architecture began to change, with new buildings incorporating features to accommodate different mobility needs. One evening, as they worked late in their expanded facility, an unexpected visitor arrived. The Baron's chief advisor entered, looking uncomfortable but determined. "The Baron requests your presence at tomorrow's council meeting," he announced. "Both of you." James glanced at Area, who had gone very still. Her response appeared slowly on the screen. "Why?" "The Grand Matriarch has proposed new laws regarding medical rights and treatment access. The Baron needs to show his support." After the advisor left, James turned to Area. "Your father's being forced to publicly change his position." "No," she typed, her third eye glowing thoughtfully. "He's being given a chance to be part of the change instead of being swept away by it." Politics at its finest. That night, working on their latest designs, James realized how far they'd come from that first day when the Baron had given his worthless daughter away as a joke. The lab had grown into a full medical center. The initial neural interface had evolved into technology that was helping hundreds. And Area. She moved around the lab with confidence now, her exoskeleton as much a part of her as her own skin. More importantly, her mind, always brilliant, had found its full expression. She had become a symbol of something larger than herself, proof that compassion combined with innovation could change not just bodies, but minds and hearts too. Sometimes, she typed as they finished their work for the day, "The best revenge against cruelty is to create something beautiful from it." Outside their window, the lights of the medical district blazed bright against the night sky, each one representing a life being changed, a family being reunited, a future being rewritten. The revolution they'd started wasn't fought with weapons, but with hope, and it was winning. The Grand Council chamber looked different now. Where once there had been only the tall, perfect forms of noble aliens, today the room held a diverse crowd. Children with exoskeletons played near their parents. Medical workers discussed cases with noble lords. Even common citizens stood proudly among the gathering, their presence a testament to how much had changed. James adjusted his formal robes, still uncomfortable with ceremony even after all this time. Beside him, Area stood in her newest exoskeleton, its crystal components catching the light. They'd designed this version together, not just for function, but as a statement. It was beautiful, a blend of human and alien aesthetics that represented everything they'd achieved. The Baron entered the chamber last, his elaborate robes unable to hide how much recent events had aged him. His third eye, once bright with arrogance, now held a different light, something closer to resignation, or perhaps wisdom. "The Council recognizes Area of House Thex," the Grand Matriarch announced, her ancient voice carrying easily through the chamber. "Step forward and present your petition." Area walked to the center of the room, each step precise and graceful. The large screens around the chamber lit up with her words as she typed on her personal interface. "1 year ago, I was given away as a joke," her message began. "Today, I stand before you to propose the Universal Treatment Act. No child, noble or common, shall be denied medical care because of genetic differences. No family shall be forced to hide their loved ones away in shame." The chamber erupted in supportive calls. Parents held their children closer. James saw tears in the eyes of many who had once hidden their own family members away. "The human doctor showed us what was possible," Area continued. "But it was our own people who proved we were ready for change. Every family who stepped forward, every healer who learned new ways, every craftsperson who helped make treatment more available. They are the real revolution." She turned to face her father directly. "The old ways taught us that genetic differences made us weak. They were wrong. Our differences teach us compassion. Our challenges make us innovative. Our diversity makes us stronger." The Baron stood slowly. The chamber fell silent, waiting. For a moment, he looked every bit the proud, cruel noble who had once given away his daughter as a cruel joke. Then his third eye dimmed, and his shoulders dropped. "I was wrong," he said simply. The words echoed through the silent chamber. "My daughter has more worth, more nobility, in her smallest act of kindness than I had in all my years of pride." He turned to address the whole council. "I support the Universal Treatment Act. Let my mistake be the foundation for a better future." The vote that followed was unanimous. As the Grand Matriarch made it official, James felt a light touch on his arm. He looked down to see a small alien child, her tiny exoskeleton glinting. "Thank you for helping me walk," she said shyly, then scampered back to her beaming parents. Later that evening, in their expanded medical center, James and Area reviewed the day's events. His indenture contract, displayed on the screen, had been converted into a permanent position as head of medical research. "Your father finally managed to surprise me," James said, looking at the contract. "I never expected him to speak in our favor." Area's response appeared with a hint of amusement. "He's a politician at heart. Better to be remembered as the father who helped create positive change than the fool who tried to stop it." They worked late into the night, as they often did, but now they were planning for the future. Training programs for new doctors, improved exoskeleton designs, outreach to distant communities. The joke that had started everything had grown into something far bigger than either of them. Just before midnight, Area composed one final message before heading home. "You once told me I wasn't broken, just waiting for someone to listen. Now our whole world is learning to listen. That's the real miracle." Outside, the city sparkled under the alien moons. In windows and doorways, the soft glow of third eyes shone without shame or hiding. The universe, James reflected, had a strange sense of humor. Sometimes the cruelest jokes could lead to the most beautiful changes, if only someone was brave enough to take them seriously. A new day was coming to Meridian, and for the first time in its long history, everyone would be awake to see it.